Hey everyone, Steven here, and welcome to my little library of horrors. Well, happy Men's Mental Health Month. Oh, that took me a couple times to get down. That is a tongue twister. So I'm certainly no stranger to the struggles and battles of having mental health issues. When I was 15, I was diagnosed with bipolar depression, and I remember at the time when I was going to therapy, and my therapist had told me about it. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, so I just need to get on some medicine and I'll be fine and da da da. And that's when she had told me, well, there is no cure for it. You'll have it for the rest of your life. And that was like a really earth shattering kind of revelation for me. Like I had always known that there was something wrong. I just never knew what it was. So kind of having that gate sort of open for me was really, really difficult for me at the time. And even to this day, I'm still learning about how it's affected my life over the years. And, and I still struggle with it today. So for today's video, I kind of wanted to do two things with it. For one, I wanted to sort of share my experiences with my mental health over the years, to sort of, I don't know, maybe let other men know that, it's okay to struggle and to have these feelings and these issues. There's others out there that may not have the same struggles, but have some kind of understanding of what you're going through, And the other thing I'd like to accomplish is to show that, again, I'd like to break more of the horror stigma of that it's just mindless violence and all of that, and to show just how deep the messages and sort of journeys these books kind of bring the readers on, and how much self-reflection it brings to us when we're seeing these characters going through something that we felt no one else understood, So yeah, before I get started, if you could just drop a quick like on the video, it helps push it out into the algorithm. And I feel like with this one, more than any other video I've ever made, I would love for it to get out there more, just because, as I said, I want it to reach more men and let them know, like I said, it's okay to have these feelings and everything. But I do want to say that the quotes I chose, while I'm speaking more to the men in my audience with this video, I chose quotes that encompass everyone. These are quotes that everybody can relate to. So I'm not alienating the rest of my audience with this. So, well, again, as I am speaking to the men in my audience, these are for everyone. But I'll quit yapping and I'll get started. So the first quote that I really love is one that I use all the time, when I'm sort of speaking with friends or even strangers online that are sort of going through something. This is something I can always bring up, and it says, "The past always seems better when you look back on it than it did at the time, and the present never looks as good as it will in the future. It's depressing if you spend too much time reliving old joys. You think you'll never have anything as good again." And that, surprisingly, comes from Jaws by Peter Benchley. So, yeah, a book about, a killer shark. It's an animal attack book. Maybe it's a little biased of me, but I don't really go into, like, animal attack books expecting this, like, something sort of so deep, like that. When I read that the first time I read this book, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, and it's something that I struggle with all the time, and I'm sure there's a lot of us that do. We look back on simpler times in our lives, where we didn't have so much adult responsibility and, sort of this weight of the marching of time as we get older, and this pressure of feeling the need to have accomplished something. I know, with myself, I feel sometimes I get really disappointed in myself that I haven't written a book yet. And sometimes like I can sit and be like, I know who I am. I've abandoned so many stories, so many projects and stuff like that. It can be really defeating feeling like, back when I was a kid, I could write no problem. It felt easy, it came so naturally to me. And, but that's also because I didn't have kids of my own. I didn't have a house to take care of. So it's something I have to remind myself, things can be tough in the moment, but they're never going to be as bad as I'll make them look in the future. So, yeah. So, nostalgia's great, but you should try to focus on looking into the future. It can be scary and terrifying, sure, but, I feel like the more you actually sit down and analyze the memories you're cherishing, or the times, I should say, not so much the memories, the times that you cherished may not have been so like rainbows and sunshines as you make it out to be now. So yeah. Next up, this quote is, "A tired life breeds tired decisions. Sometimes not at all." And that comes from one of my favorite authors ever, Jack Ketchum, in his book, Hide and Seek. Which, in this case, I have it's either the French or the Italian version. I'm not 100% sure. Forgive me for that. But in this case, it's Catch, Catch, Effroyable, which has a much sweeter cover, if I'm going to be totally honest. But I probably won't hold that up the whole time, just in case YouTube freaks out about it. But yeah, anyway, I feel like that's a really powerful quote because I feel like there's times where, we feel so exhausted that we kind of accept, excuse me, we kind of accept that, it is what it is. Like, how often do you hear that? It is what it is. And, I'm guilty of that myself. I feel like there's times where I will have sort of this pessimistic outlook on the future, and that makes me tired. That makes me feel defeated. And that's where I feel like this quote kind of comes into play, where it's, you're tired because you've taken no action to change your exhaustion. You know what I mean? So, and it's tough because, I know a lot of us, work. I know I'm a stay-at-home parent, but, I'm exhausted from the day, just because my kids are at school, I have laundry to do and rooms to clean and vacuuming and dinners to prep and stores to run to, groceries and dinners to plan. And sometimes I'm just exhausted at the end of the day. Sometimes it's 9:00 at night and I'm in bed. I'm done. I'm completely done for the night. But I'm also up at 5:30 in the morning, And I know there's other people who do harder jobs and all of that stuff. So, but I also realize that if I want change, I have to put in the effort and the time to make those changes, Being sediment and accepting what I have is only going to lead to more of what I have. So, yeah. So again, as tired as we can be, it doesn't have to be every day. Maybe even do it before you have to go to work. If you go to work, like maybe at 7 or 8, try to get up for 5 and do something that you're passionate about for you. Just take the time to be creative. Because if you wait till the end of the day, you're exhausted. You're not really going to have that motivation as much as you will when you wake up and kind of just shake the grogginess off, so, and that's something I have to do too, which I used to do, and then I fell off, and it's a cycle, but it's one I have to get back into doing. So yeah. Sorry, gotta take some coffee. Much better. So the next quote I have is, "No one really wanted to live alone. Everybody wanted somebody. Everybody wanted some place to call home." And that comes from Wet Work by Philip Nutman. So I feel like this one is especially relevant today, where I can't help but notice sort of this men versus women mentality all over social media, where it feels like a lot of hurt people just kind of lashing out against other people. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to say it's one gender over the other. I've seen it both ways. But in both cases, I've seen, "I'm staying single forever. I'm so happy I'm single. I don't have to deal with this. I don't have to deal with that," and da-da-da. And I realize, it's not that, if that's truly your decision, that's your decision. You know what I mean? I can't speak for how you truly feel on the situation. But if it's something you're saying to try and convince yourself because you either A, don't feel confident in either gaining a relationship, or you've sort of lost the hope of a stable relationship. Because I've been there myself. Like I have had my heart broken multiple times, and I have been someone who has sworn off love before, and said I was going to stay single forever. But I'm also one of those people that was saying it to convince myself that I wasn't hurt and angry, and that I felt that maybe it was something with me that was wrong. And now that I think about it, as I've gotten older, and I've gotten a lot more experience with relationships. I've been with my wife now almost 13 years now. So, I've done a lot of self-reflecting on my past relationships. And while I won't say I'm 100% at fault for why things didn't work out, I think I'm willing to accept a lot more responsibility in my part in doing so as well. Like I was, a lot of my relationships was when I was a teenager, and I was going through the sort, like I said, now discovering that I've had this mental illness that I still haven't completely fully understood at the time. I felt like the strong emotions that I always felt and the things that I was doing was normal. But now as I look back on it, I see that they were obsessive and, and wrong and just wrong, but I also have to give myself some leeway that I was also a teenager. When you're a kid, you think you know everything, you're going to do stupid stuff. And I want a lot of people out there to understand that it's okay to feel hurt and be angry at, past relationships that didn't work out, or where maybe someone wasn't faithful or something like that. And I understand that pain. I understand that anger, but I don't think it's fair to yourself to sort of shut away the world and not let yourself be vulnerable to people again. Of course it's terrifying, and, there is always the possibility of getting hurt again, but I feel like there's still a chance to have happiness and to find love. But I think you need to work on yourself and realize that a relationship is not going to be the center of your happiness. If you're not happy with yourself, no one's ever going to make you happy. So don't let the sort of self-negativity you have for yourself spew out to other people, because that's what it is. As much as we think we contain it within ourselves and we're only angry at ourselves, it lashes out to other people. So, like I said, if being single is what you want, if that, like I said, I'm not telling you you need a relationship to be happy. Or you've failed at life or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you want a relationship, but you're scared, throw yourself out there. It's you have to fail in order to improve, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah. Sorry, that's my notes there. Let's see. Okay, next up I have, as far as I was concerned, there was nothing wrong with being an odd duck. I figured some people have edges that don't allow them to slot neatly into the hole society expects them to fit into. That was all. And that comes from The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. Really love that cover. Such a good cover. But, yeah, see, this one is one that really speaks to me a lot because I have always felt like I wasn't like other guys, you know what I mean? And that's not to imply I'm better. I've never thought that. If anything, I felt like I didn't live up to other men who are able to, build things and fix things and work hard jobs and provide for their families the way that society has sort of fixated us to believe. So, there's a lot of days where, I do call myself a failure and feel like, I failed because I don't provide for my family in the way that I feel like a man should. And I hate to say that because it's like, I'm so against typical societal norms like that. But at the same time, it's been so ingrained into my head since, we were kids. It's hard to fight against that. You know what I mean? And that's not to knock any other stay-at-home dads that happen to watch this video. You know what I mean? Like, we do a lot. We do a lot. Any stay-at-home parent, I should say, we do a lot. We do a lot. But like I said, being a man, it's harder, I feel, because it's not expected of us. And, other things like I read. A lot of guys don't read. And even within the reading hobby, I read a very niche genre. You know what I mean? Like, look what I do. I review vintage horror on YouTube and stuff. And you know what I mean? I feel weird compared to other people. I can't, I feel like I can't have conversations with people, even people that have similar interests with me. I don't know. I feel weird. It's the only way I can truly say it is like, I feel comfortable doing this because, I control the narrative and the pacing of what's going on, and I don't really have to try and catch what somebody's saying to me. Whereas where I'm having a conversation with somebody, it feels, like I said, I feel like I have to hyper focus on what you're saying, and like I have to have some kind of reaction when you're saying something to make sure I'm not just kind of zoning out on what you're saying. So I don't know. It just makes me nervous, but then on the opposite side of that coin, like, I think it's pretty cool that I do something not a lot of people do. I love the hobby that I do, and, the way I dress and the music I listen to and, the media I take in is just different, and I like that. And a lot of the times like I said, it's not that I think I'm better. I will never say that. It just, I don't know. I don't know. It makes me feel unique, and who knows, maybe it's kind of egotistical in a way of me. I don't mean it to be, but it makes me happy. But yeah, so with that, I just feel free to be yourself. No matter what society says you should be doing with your life, at what age, and how you should dress, and this and that and this and that. We're all different people. We all have different interests and different ways to express ourselves. And we've all had different paths in life. Not every single one of us has always had the same options. So, fly your freak flag and enjoy what you have. Be yourself, and the right people will come to you. And lastly, for the horror quotes, I have this one, which is definitely one of my all-time favorites, and that is, "I suppose a cry does us all good at times. Clears the air as other rain does." And that comes from Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, I feel like this is such an important and powerful quote in so many ways. Men are often told we don't cry. We shouldn't cry. Crying is a weak thing to do for men. And I could never be so against such an idea. I think I worded that wrong. I am so against that idea that it sounds crazy to me. We're human beings. Like, crying is a bodily function for us. Like, it's natural. We have that capability because it's been implanted in us. Why should we not be able to do it? And that's coming from a book that was written, God, what, 150 years now? Possibly, maybe more. And that's, and that's what's always been said. Oh, men back then didn't cry and da-da-da. That's the perfect contradiction right there. The perfect contradiction right there. A man from the 1800s is telling you it's okay to cry. Because it does clear out all that fogginess in our head. I will be the first to admit it right here online for the internet to see. I cry sometimes. I don't say I sit here and openly weep, but when it's a day when the kids have been fighting all day, the house looks like a tornado's been gone through it, even though I've cleaned it twice already. I have 3 different dinners to make, and on top of all of that, maybe I haven't slept that well last night, so I'm already exhausted, and I am internalizing that you're a failure, you're a failure, you're a failure, and all of it just all becomes too much. So I will go out to the car, and I'll cry for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes if I need it. I'll let it all out. I'll yell and I'll scream and I'll cry. And it feels good. And it feels really good, because then I've calmed down. I can go back inside and get a game plan going. I've let out everything. That weight that's doing this to me, I've just, yeah. And it feels good. And it feels really good to do. So, I don't care who knows that. And you shouldn't either. If it really bothers you that much, like I said, do what I do. Find somewhere quiet to do it. Nobody will know, and you will feel infinitely better having done so, and your head will be clear. How nice is a day after the rain? When the rain's finally stopped, the clouds have broken, and the sun's out, how beautiful is it? The fog is gone, animals are out, it's beautiful. And your head needs that. I literally just, for the first time, had this conversation with my kids. When my daughter asked me, "Dad, do you have something wrong with your brain?" Like, it was just kind of like a random question. And I was honest with them, because my son was with her as well. I said, yeah, Dad has what's called depression. And they asked me what it was. And I said, the best way I can explain it is inside my head is like the weather. Some days are sunny, some days are cloudy, some days it rains, and sometimes it's a thunderstorm. And what happens is sometimes I'll be having a really sunny day, but all of a sudden a storm rolls in and I don't know why. And I can't make the storm go away. And then other times I'll be having a really stormy day or rainy day or cloudy day, and then the sun will come and be really bright and shiny and everything is so good. And then some days are just normal. And I think that's honestly the simplest way I can express how my moods work in that way. And, you know, I have raised my son to tell him it's okay to cry when you're sad, if you're feeling upset. Let it out. You can let it out. It's fine. You know, I will never make fun of you. I will never tell you not to cry. It's okay to. And I want to let that be known to all of you out there that it is okay. You know, it's really needed. So if you need to, let it out. It doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you human. But that's 5 powerful quotes from horror literature that I wanted to share with you all. But before I go, I do want to make an honorable mention. It's not a horror book, but I do think it's a quote that's also really powerful that I won't go too into depth on because this video is already almost 30 minutes. And I'm really trying to cut down on all my yapping. So, with that being said, I wanted to give a quote that is, we often ask, what's the meaning of life? But have you ever turned around and asked yourself, what's the meaning of meaning? What does it really mean to mean? The truth is, life doesn't have a meaning. But that doesn't mean it's not worth living. A life without meaning is not a life without value. And that comes from the fantastic Another Roadside Attraction by Tom Robbins. Yeah. Basically, like I said, I know a lot of us feel like we haven't accomplished anything in life, and we feel like we have to do something to be remembered by, and we got to do something or else we're a failure, and that's just not the case. It's just not the case. Truth is, a lot of us will not be remembered worldwide, but we do have people around us that will always remember us, and that's truly a valuable life to live. But anyway, that's going to be it for me today, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below with your favorite quotes, and I'll leave a link to a couple reviews I have for these books, and yeah, subscribe for more. Thank you, everyone. Catch you later.